Ooh, I'm excited. Apple Card, Apple Arcade, and Apple TV Plus. That's what we're talking about in this episode. Roll intro. If you're seriously thinking about getting this card, here's what I'll say first and foremost. Your interest rate doesn't matter because you need to be able to pay off the balance in full every month, period. End of story. This is not a good card for carrying a balance. If you want to do something like that, for real, go to your local credit union and open a credit card there if you're seriously thinking of carrying a balance month to month. Because no amount of cash back is worth the interest rate that cards like this, as in store cards, charge. Just my 2 cents on the matter. The card itself is in partnership with Goldman Sachs, and while Apple themselves have no knowledge of what you purchase, I have a feeling that that's not the same with Goldman Sachs. Either way, I think at some point someone is going to see what you're buying, even if Apple says it's 100% privacy focused. I'll be honest with you, I don't believe them in this instance. I'm not saying that other credit cards don't do that. Of course they do. That's exactly the reason why I can't bring myself to believe that nobody anywhere will ever see the data. You know? I don't know. I could be wrong. I'd just rather err on the side of caution on this one. Are there better credit cards out there on the market today? Well, no duh, there are, yes. But before we go any further, let me just make one thing very clear. I don't believe in credit card debt. I don't think that you should ever go into debt that you can't pay off at 100% at the end of the month. I mean, yeah, I get it. Life happens sometimes, and special circumstances force our hands. But seriously, don't go into debt just for stuff like cashback or rewards points unless and until you're certain that you can pay it off at the end of the month. Now, if you're looking for credit cards with actual features that's made out of metal, kind of like the Apple Card is, because for the hashtag baller and hashtag flex value, look no further than the American Express Gold and the American Express Platinum cards, feature-rich cards in the market that I've seen and personally used today. And they're also charge cards, which means it's practically impossible to accumulate debt on them. If you get one of these cards, you treat it like you would a debit card. In that, you enjoy the extra features, you get points, you get some perks, which are really nice that they offer, but at the end of the day, you have to pay off your balance in full every month. There's no option for a minimum payment because your minimum payment is the full balance. Now keep in mind, you do pay to keep these cards. There's an annual fee for the American Express cards that I mentioned. But in my opinion, the fee is worth it for the benefits that you get if you actually use the card. Now, if you want a credit card that'll give you a decent cashback rate, but you don't want to worry about the extra steps and jumping through hoops like activating categories or, trying to meet spending requirements or something along those lines, and you also don't believe in paying annual fees or don't want to, I get it. You don't want to pay to just have a card, right? Yeah, I get it. The Citi Double Cash is an excellent credit card option. 2% cash back on all purchases, period. No strings attached. If you're okay with jumping through a few hoops here and there, I can recommend the Discover Cashback card, 5% cashback on select categories every couple of months. But I digress. Let's bring it back to the Apple Card. And before I continue on with this, let me show you something. I do have an Apple Card. This is mine. Goldman Sachs, made out of metal. See, you can have a look at it right there. Look at the nice little Apple logo over there and the MasterCard and the Goldman Sachs logo on the back. I guess you want to hear me drop it because that's the thing that people are doing on YouTube. So there we go. That's nice. Okay. Anyway, moving on. First of all, with the Apple Card, there's no fees. Period. No, like literally, as far as I can tell, you don't get hit with any kind of fees ever. So that's really nice. 1% cashback if you use the physical card in stores other than Apple. Seriously, Apple, you you couldn't match the Chase Freedom's kind of rate of cashback of 1.5%. If you're getting the Apple Card, don't. Okay, just don't bother with using the physical card anywhere else but the Apple stores. Seriously. 2% cashback on purchases made via Apple Pay and Apple Wallet. Okay, now we're talking. This point right here This is how Apple drives its hooks into you and essentially accelerates change across retail stores and merchants in general. Most people will want the 2% cashback on things. Most people who have iPhones will start asking merchants, "Oh, do you support Apple Pay?" If the question they get asked is that, and it's often enough, and people keep asking them long enough, merchants are finally going to give in and start offering NFC payment processing systems. This in turn will push the entire retail payment sector forward. Well, say what you want, but in my opinion, this card is going to be the reason that mobile payments become mainstream. Well, not that they weren't mainstream previously, but at the same time, I've still been to a lot of merchants that accept credit cards, but they don't accept mobile payments such as Apple Pay or Samsung Wallet. This card, in my opinion, will change that. Now, 3% cashback spent on Apple stores or services that includes the App Store and Apple's physical stores. I have 3 things to say about this. Firstly, this is the best option if you have to subscribe anything via the App Store. Seriously, if you're going to be subscribing to Apple TV Plus, Apple Arcade, Apple Music, putting those charges on this card is a no-brainer. Secondly, the cashback on any money spent inside the Apple stores, more specifically hardware purchases, should automatically be 5% or more. Let me explain. Here's my reasoning for this. Amazon store card automatically gives me 5% cashback on anything I purchase on Amazon.com automatically. No strings attached. I can purchase Apple's hardware through the Amazon.com store. If, as a consumer, cashback was important to me, Apple's own store card doesn't beat what someone purchasing the exact same hardware on Amazon.com using their store card would get. Like, what? Come on, Apple, 5% or more on any and all hardware purchases that are made directly online through your Apple.com website or in store. Come on, that to me is a no-brainer. Also, the other thing that I'd like to state is that there's no welcome offer for new card members. I get it, Apple is a popular company and there's people out there who will get the card just because it's from Apple. But I think Apple should incentivize people to get this card by saying something like, hey, if you get approved for the card and you spend $500 in the first 3 months, you get a $200 Apple gift card. Just a thought. But my point is, Apple, have some kind of welcome offer. Come on. Every other credit card company I've ever come across had some kind of welcome offer or a welcome gift once somebody signs on for their card. You should too. Alright, now finally, before I move on to Apple Arcade and Apple TV, let's talk about forced arbitration. What is it? According to the National Association of Consumer Advocates, in forced arbitration, a company requires a consumer or employee to submit any dispute that might arise to binding arbitration as a condition of employment or buying the product or service. The employee or consumer is required to waive their right to sue, to participate in a class action lawsuit, or to appeal. Forced arbitration is mandatory, and the arbitrator's decision is binding, and the results are not public. Link to the sources in the description, by the way. Now that we've gotten something of a working definition, it's important for you to know that once you hit agree on the terms and conditions for the Apple credit card, you've automatically agreed to this. If you look at the Apple credit card user agreement, Goldman Sachs website, on page 14 of this agreement, there is the arbitration provision as of this recording. Alright, you know what it is, and you know the terms and conditions, so you can find it, and you already know that you've agreed to it if you've got the Apple card. Here's the important bit. You can opt out, but you have to do so within 90 days of opening the account. I did it. I opted out. I contacted Apple using the message button, gave them the information that they requested over the text chat, and in around, I'd say 6 to 10 minutes, I believe it was, I was done. If I can do it, so can you. And I'd highly encourage you to do so.
Well, I have a wonderful electronic invention I want you to see. It looks something like this.
Alright, now that that's done, done, let's move on to something a little more fun. Apple TV Plus. Apple's venture into the brave new world of streaming video content. Everyone knows the heavyweights of this industry: Netflix, Hulu, HBO, and coming soon, Disney Plus. Suppose you could argue that YouTube Red is a potential competitor as well, but we're gonna shelve that idea for now. I watched a few notable YouTubers talk about the service in passing. The general consensus seems to be that while Apple did a great job with regard to pricing and the unveiling of the service at the recent event, it seems that there's not much enthusiasm around the service. And at first glance, I get it. I understand why people are apprehensive about this. Maybe Apple doesn't understand the streaming landscape. Maybe the landscape is already overcrowded and oversaturated. People just don't have enough money to spend on 6 different streaming services a month. I agree. All valid concerns. But I think what most people aren't thinking about is how Apple has always played the long game. Instead of borrowing content from other companies to attract viewers, and let's face it, Apple certainly has enough money to pay royalties and the fees to other companies so that they can have their content on Apple TV Plus. But they're going the path less traveled. In the end, in my opinion, Apple TV Plus may actually be the de facto service that people get. Now, before all you Apple haters get your pitchforks ready and, type in the comments about how I don't know what I'm talking about, let me preface this with something. I have both Netflix and Hulu. I love both the services. And I'd still hesitate to pay the $5 asking price for Apple TV Plus. Why? Because there isn't enough content on the service as of yet. But here's the thing. That doesn't matter, because there doesn't have to be enough content right now. Here's what I mean. I already know that I'll be getting the latest iPhone when it comes out this year, which means that as things stand right now, Apple TV Plus, for me and my family at least, is free for the entire year. And there you have it. The hook. As long as someone in the family gets a new Apple product, this could include a Mac, an iPhone, an iPad, what have you. As long as somebody gets a new Apple product in the family, you've got a potential introduction for Apple TV to the entire family. Great, Apple's got the hook down. Now, how do you keep the people who are hooked actually interested in the service long term? Well, that's where Apple's strategy kind of differs from the competition a little bit. Instead of licensing content from other networks and providers, they're doing the thing that they do best: maintain full control from top to bottom, so that they can have all the control over the quality of the content and the experience that the end user has. They seem to be applying the same strategy, in my opinion, that video game consoles have been using for multiple generations now. How do you sell the most amount of consoles? Through exclusives. Sure, multi-platform games are great, but I've personally seen people buy a PlayStation console to be able to play the Uncharted games, the Spider-Man game, or even The Last of Us. On Microsoft's side, I've seen people buy an Xbox 360 so that they could play Gears of War back in the day. Except here, instead of a game console, you're buying a phone, or a tablet, or a computer, and the exclusive content just happens to be an add-on, a value add. The more I think about it, the more I'm beginning to think that Apple, of all the companies out there, is uniquely positioned to break into this oversaturated market and beat all the rest. Not by borrowing from others, but by creating their own shows. What's that tagline again? Give people wonderful tools and they'll do wonderful things? Yeah, that. They've hired some of the best people in the industry, and to the best of my understanding, given them as much creative freedom as possible. If money isn't a problem, talent isn't an issue, and the distribution is taken care of as well, I'm serious. They don't have to pay royalties to other companies, and they can pump out more money if need be to fund some of the best creative minds out there to make exclusive content for their own network. Look, you might not like Apple TV much right now, but eventually there will be something for everyone on the service, and everything will be from Apple. And then Apple TV Plus is truly going to be a juggernaut. Finally, let's talk about Apple Arcade. Now, there seems to be some confusion about who actually is the audience for this service. I, myself, am both a PC and a console gamer. I'll say this outright that I'm not the intended target audience for this service. Let's start with parents who have children. Children go through games really fast, and parents also don't want to have to pay for games for kids as well. So I can definitely see a parent subscribing to this service and handing their kids an iPad, an iPhone, or an Apple TV game controller and saying, have at it, without ever having to worry that their kid might potentially rack up a $500 or a $1,000 bill on their credit card by accident, because guess what? There are no microtransactions in any of the games that are included with Apple Arcade. There's no wait 24 hours before your next turn, or pay now for Boost. You know what I'm talking about. Now, the second demographic that I can think of is college students. But before you start typing in the comments telling me how college students are poor and have little to no money as it is, hear me out. College students will jump on this if Apple does one thing: create a bundle. I'm serious. Call it something like, I don't know, the Apple Pass or something, right? And do this. $9.99 a month. You get Apple TV Plus, Apple Music, and Apple Arcade for one person. You could also have another bundle called Apple Pass Family, where you can get Apple Music, Apple TV Plus, and Apple Arcade for the whole family for $14.99 a month. If you want to go even further, you can have an Apple Pass called Apple Pass Student, only for college students, where they pay $7.99 a month and they get all of these services. Last but not least, Apple. I don't know if you'll do this, but if you make Apple Pass Family free for 1 year with every new Apple device purchase, then that's it. You won. Period. It's game over. No pun intended. People are going to be hooked, and they'll be using all of your services. They'll love the value that you bring to the table and the sheer amount of quality content that they will get with their Apple purchases as an add-on, especially if they're just changing out phones or buying a tablet or something else every single year. Yeah. Anyway, listen. If you made it this far into the video, I want to thank you. If you've enjoyed the content, hit the like button on the video. And don't forget to hit subscribe and that little bell icon to get notified whenever I post a new video, which is usually once a week. I do my best to stay consistent, so if you're new here, welcome. My name is Jay, and this has been your Redacted Report. Until next time, I'm out.